Thank you so much. I would love to. And good afternoon and good morning, everyone. Miriwe, salam, masa al khair. Good to see so many people here. I very much wish we could be together in Dallas. Actually, to be really honest, I wish I were in Kigali right now, which is one of my favorite places where I was a number of years ago and still has a special place in my heart. So for those of you in Kigali, I'm thinking of myself there with you as well. I'm an opera singer by training. That was my first career aspiration, was to be on stage singing opera in front of thousands of people. And when I stopped singing opera, I never thought that I would use those skills again until I got my first job working within an organization. And on that first day of that first job, I found out I'd have to give speeches on behalf of my organization. So I want you, everyone on this call, to think about that first time you ever had to speak in public. How did it feel? I was terrified. I can see some of your faces. I can see you didn't like it either. But I knew how to sing and dance on stage. So I had stage presence. I simply had to convert it to executive presence. And in doing that, I was able to take all these skills I had learned in one field and then transition them to a completely new industry. I started helping people with their public speaking. They came to me for help, and something really important happened. I charged them money. And in doing so, all of a sudden, I was an entrepreneur. 16 years later, I teach public speaking and presentation skills all around the world for very large companies, nonprofits, and inspired individuals. And I work with everyone at all stages of their career. What I find is, while everyone needs public speaking, regardless of our gender, as women, when we lack these skills, it holds us back more. It disproportionately affects us when we lack these skills. And this is relevant whether you're in Afghanistan or Rwanda or in a boardroom in New York City. It is, we all need these skills, and women need them more than ever. Now, Bobby Brown mentioned this, Bobby Brown Alexander mentioned this earlier. When women, when we face a whole set of expectations of how women should sound. And then when we move into leadership or start a company, we face these expectations of how a leader should sound. And those can be two different sets of expectations. Some of you may have grown up being taught that a woman doesn't speak in front of a man, that it's rude to speak in public. I see some heads nodding, right? That it's rude to speak in public. I have so much respect and admiration to you for having the courage to confront those cultural norms and start to change them. That is not easy to do, especially if you don't have role models who are doing it already, or maybe you do, but not as many as you would like. And so it is so challenging to do this, which is why I have so much respect for what you've already done to help you get to this place. What I'm going to do today is to share strategies to help you speak with confidence and authenticity about yourself and about your business, to take the tools that you've learned already yesterday and today about leadership, about advocacy, and help you present yourself as effectively as possible as you take your products and services to the marketplace in very new ways. As Jim mentioned, our customers have changed. Our buying processes have changed. Amy mentioned the way we connect with and inspire or advocate with others has changed. So what do we do to be the most powerful, confident version of ourselves every single day, whether we're virtual or on camera, whether we're virtual, on camera, or in person? You are blazing a path for other women, and this is going to help you inspire others to follow in your footsteps. And we're going to use exercises. This is going to be very interactive. In fact, I know we've all been sitting for a long time. Can everyone take a minute, stand up, and just stretch out for a minute? Everyone stand where you are. I know we need to do this. I need to do this. Keep your distance if there are others around you. Stand up and just roll your shoulders out, or just move your arms, get the blood flowing, shake out your hands and feet. I know we all needed this. This is going to be a more interactive session, but in the meantime, I want you to get a little bit of movement. Thank you very much. You can sit down. As you have questions today, we're going to cover 3 questions to ask before you write a pitch or presentation, 3 movements to make that come alive, and then we're going to do a breakout session where you'll practice. As you have questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature on Zoom. My colleague Sarah is joining us from Global Public Speaking. If I miss those questions, I give her permission to interrupt me so that I can answer your questions. You can also put them in the chat box as well. We will have time at the very end for questions too, but if you have any in the meantime, you can always feel free to use that raise hand feature or the chat box to answer your questions. For me, public speaking is never just about reading from a script or giving a presentation. For me, my core belief is that public speaking is about exercising leadership with your voice, using your voice to speak up on behalf of yourself, on behalf of others, every single day at work, in your community. That's why this is such an important part of our Peace Through Business program, because of you using your voice as an advocate for yourself or for others. So with that in front of us as our why we're here today, why it's important, I want to start with those 3 questions. And I think I saw some people handing out handouts. You should have a handout you can use to follow along. If you don't, you'll have that afterwards as a takeaway. There are 3 questions to ask yourself before any meeting, pitch, presentation, or difficult conversation. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's agriculture or supply chain or cosmetics or health and wellness. Doesn't matter what language you're speaking or where you live in the world. You always ask these 3 questions. And the first question, Amy teed up for us. Amy talked about the importance of that question. We always start with who's our audience, because we want to know what language to speak. And I don't mean what foreign language, whether it's Kinyarwanda or French or Dari or Arabic. That may be an important question. But when I say what language do they speak, I mean, do they speak the language of your industry? As Amy mentioned, what's important to them? What do they care about? Not just what's important to you, that's valid, but especially what motivates them? What inspires them? What persuades them? And I think back to an experience I had when I was studying at the Harvard Kennedy School, and there was a group of women from Afghanistan talking about promoting girls' education within Afghanistan. And they were speaking to a group of men, they were telling a story about talking to a group of men in Afghanistan, convincing them the importance of educating girls. And I remember somebody asked them a question and said, what persuasive tools did you use? What arguments did you use to persuade these men? And one of the panelists responded and said, we quoted the Quran. We quoted this religious source to persuade men. We use that as our argument. And that's a perfect example of knowing your audience. What will persuade them? What do they follow? What's important to them? And then using what's important to them in your argumentation. That's what who's your audience is about. It's putting yourself in their shoes to say, how do they make decisions? What's important to them, especially now during COVID, as Jim mentioned, what's on their minds and how can I speak to that? So that's why who's your audience is so important. The second question you ask before a meeting or pitch or presentation is, what's your goal? Every time you speak up, you have the opportunity to change the way people think, to change the way they act, to change their behavior. That's an incredible opportunity. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard entrepreneurs pitch their business and they talk about the service and the competition and the market and the financials, and they end without a call to action. They end without a request and ask. And we're left thinking, okay, that was great, but what do you want? Do you need money? Do you need introductions? Do you need partners? Do you need clients? So understanding your goal, what's your goal of this meeting, pitch, or presentation, helps you be very clear about the request that you make, about what you want people to do. How you phrase it is going to depend on who's your audience. How do they like to receive information? It will depend on the cultural constraints, what's appropriate to ask for. And knowing your audience will help figure that out. So those first two questions, who's your audience, what's your goal, are fairly straightforward. We know to ask these questions. The third question is the most important and the least understood in public speaking. In my experience, the third question changes everything, and it touches on what Debbie said and what Amy said in their presentations. That third question is why you? And by why you, I don't mean where did you go to school? I don't mean where's your family from? I don't mean how many years of experience do you have? Those are external validators. By why you, I mean, why do you care? Why do you care about your business? Why do you care about the people you serve? Why do you care about the people who work for you, about your audience? Because it reminds you that your right to speak doesn't come from anyone else. Your right to speak up comes from why you care. And when you connect with that why you care, it gives you the confidence and the courage to speak up. Especially now, it helps you be more creative. It helps you refine that sense of purpose. We are all in this period of extreme instability and uncertainty. Many of our speakers mentioned it this morning. We are tired, we are stressed, we are overworked. Personally, 2 weeks ago, I packed up my apartment, packed up my car, and drove 1,000 miles to my family's house so that I would be near people who could support me, because I needed that support after 4 months of pivoting my business from in-person to virtual training. 4 months of, as Jim said, surviving, making sure the business survived. And I did what I needed to do in order to refine my purpose. For me, it was about being with family. The why you is critical. And I want to give you an example of why you, and then I'm going to give you a minute to craft your own why you. So an example of why you comes from my friend Ana Iris in Puerto Rico. I met Ana Iris last year for a Bank of America Vital Voices Global Ambassadors program. And when I met Ana, she hated public speaking. She did not want to be in the spotlight or the center of attention. But Ana's the executive director of her nonprofit. So guess what? You are the center of your organization. You have to be the face of your organization. So with Ana, we worked on the 3 questions. Who's your audience? What's your goal? Why you? Why do you care? And Ana Iris told me a story. She told me about her husband and her husband's 15-year-old daughter. It was a tragic story because his daughter died in a car accident, and it devastated him. It devastated the family. But then she told the story of the 15-year-old daughter coming to her husband in a dream and telling him to start this nonprofit for her because of the help she needed and didn't get. And every single day, Ana Iris wakes up thinking of that 15-year-old daughter, and it reminds her why her work is so important, despite all the challenges that they faced, all the obstacles, all the hurdles. The why you reminds her of her sense of purpose. And as she was talking, Ana Iris took out this notebook and she wrote in it, "I am in the service of others, that's why." And reframing it as not about being her, it's not about her, it's about her mission, her purpose, helping others. That gave her the courage to get in front of the spotlight and stand up. And now Ana Iris won't stop talking. She's speaking to the media, she's doing presentations, she's doing videos, because she's reframed it about her audience and her message, not about her. That's the power of the why you. Why you means, why do you care? And when was a time in your life that made you care? And I want to give you a couple of minutes right now. I'd like you to write down on the back of that handout or on a separate piece of paper, write down as it relates to your business, why do you care? And what was a time in your life that made you care? And if you're a guest joining us, whether it's your business, your work, your community, answer the why you with that in mind. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to write something down. A little later in our program, we're going to do a breakout group. For right now, what I'd like you to do is turn to someone next to you and share your why you with them and have them share theirs with you. And if you're joining on your own, what I'd like you to do is simply speak it out loud. Let's make sure everyone is muted for this. But I want you, if you're in a room with other people, turn to someone next to you and share your why you with them. And if you're by yourself, speak it out loud. Speak it to yourself, and I'll give you a couple of minutes for this. Keep yourselves muted on video. Excellent. Okay. Do we have a volunteer who would like to share their why you on video with the rest of the group? If so, you can use that raise hand feature on the participant list and unmute yourself and share your why you with the group. You can also, if you'd like, share your why you in the chat. You don't even have to speak it out loud. Just put in the chat box why you care about the work that you do. But if you'd like to volunteer to share it with your voice, use that raise hand feature on the participant list. I see some big smiles, which usually means people are uncomfortable volunteering. But you can also put it in the chat box if you'd like and share that why you in the chat box so that we can read it. Chantal, I see you raising your hand the old-fashioned way. Let's go ahead, and I'd love to hear yours. Please unmute yourself. You are unmuted, I see.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Why me? It's because I'm on a mission as a country facilitator to help women through the education to empower them through the program of Peace Through Business.
Excellent. And was there a time in your life when this became important to you?
Since I became a country facilitator 5 years ago.
Excellent. What I would ask you to do in the future as well is to build on this and think of one moment in time, one experience you had, perhaps right when you became a country facilitator, where you thought, wow, this is why I do what I do. That's your homework for what to do in terms of next steps with the why you. Thank you, Chantal. Thank you for sharing that. It takes a lot of courage to share in front of the group. You can mute yourself now. We're going to keep going unless there was one other person who wanted to volunteer. Yes, I see. I can't see your name, but I see you waving. So with the red headphones, you know who you are.
Yeah, my name is Delphine. I'm in Pennsylvania as a student, and I was vice president in PTB, in AAPTB aura in the last year. So why me? I think in my dream, what I receive like in different ways as a mom, as a leader, as a PDM member, I have to inspire others. So that's why I think why me, what I have to inspire others, and then I have what I receive to not honor me, it's even for others. So that's why me. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Delphine. And you can mute yourself now. It's great to have these volunteers. For others, by the way, we have a social media campaign called Why You. And so if you email me, and Sarah's going to put my email address in the chat, if you email me your Why You, along with a photo of yourself, we'll share it on social media, because we want to amplify the voices of women and men as well, who are using their voices and their sense of purpose to speak up, what inspires them to speak up. So we're going to keep going right now, but as you have more why yous, go ahead and email them to me, and I would love to feature them. And where can you use this why you? I have found it to be a powerful way of introducing yourself at the beginning of a pitch, at the beginning of a presentation, as people are getting to know you, or before giving people difficult news, because it reminds them of why you care, and then they're more willing to hear the difficult news. So the why you is a very powerful question to calm you, to ground you in a sense of purpose, and to strengthen your voice when you speak up. And that's the third of the 3 questions. Who's your audience? What's your goal? Why you? Why do you care? From the 3 questions, I'd like to now turn to 3 movements. So the 3 questions you use to form the strategy before you craft a pitch or presentation, before you craft your message, but they get you into the right mindset to craft that message, because you know who you're speaking to, what you want them to do, and why you care. Let's now turn to how you deliver that message in an engaging, authentic way. And Amy talked about the importance of authenticity in advocacy. Authenticity is critical in everything that we do. And so there are 3 movements that we'll talk about, and then you're going to practice them as well. The 3 movements, I should mention, are very culturally specific. So I'm going to tell you how I use them in an American context, in a general multinational context. It's your responsibility as a speaker to ask that first question, who's my audience? So that you know the cultural expectations and you know what to accommodate and what to push back on. And you're doing it intentionally. So the first of the 3 movements is with your eyes. And there are 2 ways to do this. There's in person and virtual. In person, I recommend something called eye connection. You choose one person in the audience and you speak to them for a full thought and you really connect. And then you turn to someone else and you connect with them for a full thought. So if you're speaking to 50 people, you're not trying to speak to 50 people at once. You're having a series of one-on-one conversations with everyone in the room. This is certainly very culturally specific, because some of you may be in places where women don't make direct, sustained eye contact with men, or you don't make direct, sustained eye contact with someone of a higher, more senior status, maybe an elder. I see some nodding heads here. So eye contact in person, you have to decide what's appropriate for this audience. I can't tell you what that answer is. I can tell you in a general multinational audience, I look someone in the eye, complete a full thought, and then I move on to someone else. Virtually, this is very different, because if I stood here going like this or going like this, I'm not looking at you. And when I look at you, that's how I'm building trust and connection with you. So on camera, I want to know exactly where the camera lens is, and I want to speak into the camera lens the entire time. I may pause to look away and think, but I'm going to come back to the camera lens in order to speak. And this is really important when you have that important message to deliver, when you're asking for money, investment, asking for introductions, asking for business. If I look down at the image of you on my screen and I say, this is really important, we need to be paying attention to this, I'm breaking, well, first of all, you see my gray hair, but second of all, I'm breaking the connection that we have. So this is hard because I want to see your reaction. I see, when I tell a joke, Chantal is smiling and that makes me feel really good. But if I look at Chantal the whole time, I'm breaking my connection with you. This is why speaking on camera is so tiring, because my eye contact is going back and forth between my notes, between your images and the camera lens. This is not natural for anyone unless they are an on-camera journalist and they do this all the time. For the rest of us, it's a skill we need to build and practice. That's eye contact, specifically on camera. The second movement is with the rest of our body, whether or not we smile, our eyebrow movement, our hands. I tend to talk a lot with my hands. Some people will say too much. Again, that's cultural. Or how much you walk around. I'm going to teach you an exercise, a technique that you can use. It's going to help you with body language. It's also going to help you with the third movement, which is with your voice. And the technique is called intention. Before I explain what it is, let me explain why it's important. In person, we might have this wonderful charisma, energy, warmth, confidence. Then we get on camera and all of our energy falls flat and we start to talk like this, especially if we're reading from a script. And that natural warmth is gone. Plus, I don't know about you, but I pick up energy from my audience. By being in the room with you, whether we're in Afghanistan or in Rwanda or we're in Dallas, Texas, you're giving me energy, which then I reflect back. On camera, I don't get a lot of energy from you because I'm looking into the camera lens. So I have to take my presence, my in-person warmth and presence, and now I have to transmit it over a camera lens. So that's why intention is so important. It will help you both in person and virtual. So let me explain what this technique is. When I say intention, I mean focused energy. Whatever I do, I commit to it. I want you to imagine that you're exercising. Maybe you're going to the gym, maybe you're going for a run or a walk, or maybe you're doing weights outside, and you work out with zero intention. How effective are you going to be? Not very effective. Imagine shaking someone's hand. I know we can't do this anymore, but shaking someone's hand with zero intention. How effective are you going to be? Shake your head if it's not very effective. No. But now imagine 100% focused energy, working out, exercising, shaking someone's hand with 100% focused energy. Now, how effective are you going to be? Now you're going to see results. You're going to have energy. You're going to have warmth and enthusiasm, and it'll come across over the camera lens. That's why intention is so important. So what I'd like you to do right now, keep yourselves muted. I'm going to ask everyone where you are, whether you're with people or on your own, to introduce yourself in one sentence at the same time with zero intention. Give that a try. Introduce yourself with zero intention. Give it a try. Okay, I see Sasanga's got his hand on his face. That's great. Zero intention, not even looking. Now I want you to introduce yourself out loud all at the same time in one sentence with 100% focused energy, 100% intention. Ready? Go. So I see some people are smiling. I see people standing up taller. So I see your body language changed. I bet your tone of voice changed. Since March, I've been teaching people how to pivot from in-person to virtual presentations. I've been doing almost daily workshops and speeches on this. Intention is by far the most transformational technique you can use to connect with people virtually. It works in person, but it's critical virtually as well. Do we have a brave volunteer willing to try on camera speaking this intention exercise? Do we have anyone willing to give this a try? And I'm going to ask Pararish if we have someone where you are who's willing to volunteer and give this a try, because I know we haven't called on your room yet. Anyone there willing to do this?
Yes, Celestine, just a while.
Pararish, yes, go ahead. We want to make sure we can just hear your audio though and not others, so there's no background. Who's going to volunteer?
قدام خير بلان كنم
تمنى will do it. Yes.
Do we have a volunteer? Okay, great. Okay, great. I'm going to pin her video so I can see her. Let's see. Oh, her video is pinned. There we go. Oh, and I can see you standing up. Wonderful. Tell me your name again.
My name is Tamanwa. So for the first one,
Yes, zero intention.
okay, I'm Tamanwa.
That was a perfect example of zero intention, Tamana. And also do it a little longer, like my name is Tamana and one sentence about yourself, zero intention.
I'm Tamanwa and I make documentary films.
Okay, great example, zero intention. Now, I want you to think about 100% intention, focused energy, and introduce yourself again.
Hey, my name is Tamanwa and I make documentary films.
Fantastic. Those in the room, give her a round of applause. Give her a round of applause in the room. Fantastic, thank you. And you can mute that video now. Tamana, great example of more energy. You had a stronger voice. You said hi. You sounded like you cared. And for those of you listening, put in the chat box, what was the difference with that second example that Tamana gave us? Put in the chat box what the difference was in her second introduction, if you can. If you're in the room, tell her in person, because I know you can hear each other and you're muted, which is great. For others, put in the chat box what was different that second time. And I'm so glad that we got a volunteer so we could hear that difference. When you speak with intention, it changes your energy. Linda, exactly. She had more energy. What else? Put in the chat box. What else was the difference here? I noticed more enthusiasm. I noticed a smile on her face, better posture. So that's her body language. I also heard a difference in her voice, which is the third of the three movements. Not the words you say, but the tone of voice when using it. Nadine, yes, she was focused, exactly. So it's about your tone of voice. So often we focus on the words, but we don't focus on the tone. And if there's a disconnect between my words and my tone, people will believe the tone. If I started our session and said, thank you very much for that introduction, I'm really happy to be here. What are you thinking? Do I seem happy to be here? No, exactly. So if you want to have people believe what you're saying, your words and your tone have to be in alignment. They have to be on the same, they have to be saying the same thing. That's what intention does. It affects that third movement with your voice. And when you're flustered and you're forgetting all of this and you're confused or you get a difficult question, pause and breathe. Pausing and breathing helps calm you and focus you so that then you can speak with intention. I think we have a question from Amina. And I'm going to ask Amina, if you do have a question, unmute yourself and ask that question. Otherwise, we'll hold that question. We'll have more questions at the end. But Amina, let me know if you have a question.
Thank you. Actually, I don't have a question. I just want to pretend, as in what should I say?
Do you want to practice
Actually, I wanted
your
to give
intention?
the answer of what he said.
Amina, do you want to practice your intention?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So Amina, try first zero intention. Introduce yourself with zero intention.
Oh, my name is Amina, and I'm happy to be here.
Oh, that's great. That's great. You don't sound very happy to be here, but it's a perfect example. The second exercise is introduce yourself, same language, but with 100% intention.
Okay. Nitwa Amina. Nitwa Amina. Mu by'ukuri ndabona.
Let me have you do this again.
Bitwaye.
Let's have you do this again with 100% energy. And I didn't quite catch what you were saying.
Oh, okay. Oh, my name is Amina, and I'm so happy. I'm excited to be here.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you. I caught that the second time. And if you're in the room with Amina, give her a round of applause. Great example of that before and after. What's it like to speak with intent, without intention, and then with intention? So as you're preparing to speak, pause and breathe, and then speak with intention. And you'll notice with both women, Tamana and Amina, they weren't yelling. Intention is not about volume and it's not about pitch. It's about focus. And that's whatever focus means for you with your voice. Not trying to sound like anyone else, but your voice at its strongest. So what we're going to do right now is a breakout group. And let me give you the instructions for the breakouts, and then our team is going to break you into groups. If you are in person with other people, then I'm going to ask you to form a group of three or four, depending on how the numbers work out. Keep your distance. I want you to remember social distancing while you're in your groups. And I want you to practice your YUs with one another with 0 and then with 100% intention. So you're going to practice sharing your YU first with 0 intention and then with 100% intention. You'll do this in your breakout groups, in groups of 3 or 4 if you are in the same room. If you're not in the same room, I'm going to ask you to do this out loud on your own, because I don't think we can have you do it on video with others in person. I think we'll need to separate this. And Carol, if there's a better alternative for that, for the people who are not in person, I'm happy to accommodate that. But for the people who are in person, I'm going to ask you to practice your YUs with one another, with and without intention. Carol, any words before we go into the breakout groups?
Yes, what we're going to do, yesterday we broke into individual groups within our groups in Rwanda and Afghanistan. But today we'll have the big breakout room in Afghanistan and the big room in Rwanda. And then anyone else who is a guest on their own, they will be divided between one of those two groups.
Got it. So I'm going to ask for those in those groups, have one volume on, so have one laptop unmuted,
Yes.
so that those who are joining remotely can hear you practice, and they can practice, and those people joining on their own can practice out loud on their own. If we were all in virtual breakout groups, then everyone would practice in the small groups. But that's not what we're going to do. We'll have people in person practice out loud, but also make sure that others joining remotely can hear you. And then we'll come back together. We'll be in this group for 10 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for your questions. What did you learn hearing your colleagues, your peers introduce themselves with and without intention? Go ahead and put that in the chat. I'd love to have a chat conversation about that. What was it like hearing people practice? Was it helpful to you to be able to practice that? And while you're putting that into the chat, I also want to open it up for your questions, because a lot of what I've shared is intended to be immediately useful to you in the kinds of speaking that you're doing every day, whether it's a meeting, a conversation, a pitch, or a presentation. So I'd like to hear your questions so that I can help you apply this to the kind of speaking you have to do. So if you have a question, raise hand feature on the participant list, or tell your room host and they can speak up and ask your question. And then in the chat box, share some observations of that exercise. Do we have any questions?
Hello everyone. My name is Mukashima Clemence. I'm a businesswoman, and I have a company for steel. So I want to do a business with you.
Mukashima, tell me again what your business is. Tell me again what your business is.
I'm producing a steel. Yes.
Producing a series, did you say?
Yeah, I am steel. I import raw material. Yeah, from China, and I do production for gutters, for hashes, followers. That's my business.
That's great. That's great. And what was your comment? Please tell me again. What was your comment or question?
My question? Oh, I don't have question.
I think you said you wanted to talk about your business, and I'm happy to do that. You can email me and we can talk about your business. I would love to. I think the sound may be a challenge.
Oh.
Okay, and we're going to put my email address. Sarah's going to put my email address in there. You can email me your question or comment directly. In the meantime, I saw Linda put in the chat box on the intention exercise. She said, without intention, you lose the audience. And I absolutely agree with you. I find that as well, that with intention, that's how I keep people engaged. Great observation, Linda. What other questions do people have? What other questions do you have based on these exercises or based on the material that we've covered so far? I'm going to put this on gallery view so I can see people and see if they have what questions they have. Also, why don't I first see Barbara in your group? What questions do you have in your group?
We didn't have any questions, any specific questions.
Okay, Barbara, if you have them,
we just focused on practicing public speaking, the skills that you taught in the first session before the breakout session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. If you do have questions, Barbara, you can jump in and ask them.
Allison, this is Sarah. I have a question from Linda.
Yes, thank you, Sarah. Go ahead.
Sure. Linda asks, how do you get more comfortable with public speaking?
A lot of people ask this question, Linda. It is a very important question. Practice is the most important component in public speaking, which is why the exercise that we did is so important, because what you did is you formed a practice group and you practiced with them. And in a longer workshop, you would also give each other feedback on how well you spoke with intention, how well you spoke clearly and concisely and got to the point. So practice is the first way to get comfortable with public speaking. The second way to get comfortable with it is to come up with a process. So a lot of people are afraid of public speaking because they don't have a process. They simply think about it and stress about it and worry about it until the night before the speech. And then the night before, they write out a script and then they don't sleep. And then the next morning, they expect to be the most authentic version of themselves when they're sleep deprived and overworked. That's not an effective way of speaking in public. I like to recommend a process that people can use. It starts with asking the 3 questions and then thinking about your main messages and condensing them into 3 points. There's a particular outline that I teach, a structure that I teach. Let me see if I can point. In my book, I have a number of different tools and frameworks to give you a process so that then as you have a speech coming up, you can block off time. And what I recommend is if you put a speech on your calendar, block off time to prepare leading up to that speech. So if you put the speech on your calendar for Friday at 8 a.m., I want you to block off Monday and Wednesday as block off time to prepare so that you're giving yourself that space instead of just trying to work it into your schedule. Those are a few ways to become more comfortable, Linda. And Sarah, I can see these questions, so I'm going to dive into them. Bobby said, you're also a minister teaching Bible class. That is fantastic. Can you speak to making the transition style based on the audience? Absolutely. And in the course that I taught at the Kennedy School this year, I had a minister in my course who came with a specific focus on how to give better sermons, how to be more effective in engaging my audience. And I'm sure Bobby, you already do this, but the storytelling component is so important there, using scripture, using stories from the Bible, but not just that, but placing them in a context of today. So using that, taking that scripture and then making it relevant to today. That's something that my rabbi does really effectively by taking these stories and then saying, what does it mean to us? In my class, what my student did effectively is he used analogies, and he used that phrase, he talked about making love go viral, as opposed to making a virus go viral, making love go viral. So it was using the content that we're here to cover and placing it in today's context. And that goes to knowing your audience and what they care about. And I'm sure, Bobby, that you already do that. That's a particular sensitivity that I would use in that particular context. Sheja asked, how do I manage to keep my audience's attention? It really depends on the tools that I have at my disposal. So one way of keeping my audience's attention is asking questions, saying, who here, who has dealt with this? What are the questions on your mind? What challenges do you face? It's really going to depend on the context. So on a Zoom platform, I know that I have to keep questions to certain points of time because we have issues with the sound and turning on and off the microphone. In person, I can quickly say, by a show of hands, how many of you, and then ask a question. In general, questions are very, very helpful to engage your audience. I also think about stories. What stories can I tell that take the audience on a journey? So when I tell facts, the audience, one part of their brain lights up. But when I tell stories, then the audience is actually transported into my story. That's why when I talked about Ana Iris, I talked about her opening that book, writing in the book, and I took you into that story with me. So that's a really effective way of engaging your audience, by taking their mind on a journey. You also engage them by being very clear and concise, because the more you ramble, the more you lose their attention. That's why it's really important to keep your remarks focused and organized. You notice I said I'm going to cover 3 questions and then 3 movements. So you knew where I was at every point, and that helped keep you engaged. Barbara asked a great question. She said, there's some body language acts that can be offensive in one culture and not offensive in the other. What would you do then? This is why know your audience is really important. So there are certain things, if I'm using my hands to talk about 2 or 0, depending on where I am, there are certain gestures I would and would not want to make. What I'm going to do is not use any gestures that might be misconstrued. And this goes for any humor or any expressions. I'm going to talk to, if I don't know the culture of the audience, I'm going to talk to someone in advance to better understand that audience and figure out what body language should I not use. I also think about, based on that audience, how do I want to dress? There are certain places where if I'm on stage, I've got this cute blue dress with little sleeves right here, and my arms are bare. There are some places that I travel to where I'm going to cover my arms out of respect for my audience and their cultural norms. So all of that is figuring that out in advance and then knowing what you can do. Now, also remember, if you're being videotaped and it's going to be streamed online, you might have one audience in the room, but then other people from back home may watch, or from another culture. So you have to solve for not just the culture of the people in the room, but everyone else who might be watching it. So I would do my research. If there's a doubt, ask someone. And if there's a doubt, leave it out. Because these days, especially now, there's a challenge. If we do or say something we didn't intend, the repercussions these days are much stronger than they were before. And so we want to be very careful not to unintentionally, certainly, or intentionally offend anyone. So it takes more work and research and practice on your end to make sure everyone is comfortable in your presentation. There was another question from Amina. How do you know that you lost your intention? Amina, I'm not sure I quite understood that. You lost your intention to the audience and fear the audience. Amina, can you unmute yourself and ask that question a different way?
Okay, I just want to know, like, how do you differentiate between having fear in front of audience or zero tension in front of audience?
Zero tension?
As in, yeah, no intention, sorry. With having no intention in front of audience and having fear in front of audience. Yeah. How do you differentiate?
Great question, Amina. Sometimes because of your fear, you will have zero intention. Because you're afraid either of your audience or what you're going to say or what the audience will think of what you say, you may it may hold you back from being yourself. That's why the why you exercise is so important, because it grounds you in your sense of purpose. One of the ways in which, even if you're afraid, you can still show energy is by using the intention technique. So intention works even if you're afraid. If you simply think 100% intention and you speak, it's going to help counteract some of the fear. I also recommend that you stop trying to completely get rid of your nervousness. It's okay to be nervous before you speak up. It's natural. We all feel nervous. I was nervous myself listening to Bobby speak and Amy speak and knowing, okay, my turn's coming up. I'm going to have to speak soon. Pause and breathe. I had to calm myself, or I had to reduce my nervousness, but I know it's normal. And in fact, your nervousness is what keeps you focused and makes you prepare. It keeps you focused and reminds you that it's important to make the time to prepare. We have time for one more question. Are there any other questions before I talk about where you go from here? I don't see any other questions, so I'm going to give you a few tips and some words of inspiration to send you on your way. The first is, if you would like to stay in touch with me, I send public speaking tips by email once a month. I take frequently asked questions from our programs, I turn them into an article, and I publish them through my newsletter. And Sarah is going to put a link in the chat box to that newsletter. You can click on that link and sign up. And if you click on that link and sign up, you'll also get a download of a free chapter of my book, Speak with Impact, which is a collection of stories and a process for writing, practicing, and delivering a speech. So you'll get that if you sign up for the newsletter. Where do you go from here? You saw how helpful it can be to practice with one or two other people. Find a practice partner from this program. Maybe it's someone who was in your room practicing. Maybe it's someone from a different country who you want to get to know better. Reach out to them, set up a Zoom call, and practice for one another and give each other feedback. Chantal said this in the beginning when she gave us her opening remarks. We don't do this alone. None of us runs a business alone. None of us makes everything work alone. We do it together, helping one another. And it's the same thing with public speaking. Find your partner who you can practice with and get feedback. I want to thank Bank of America for the opportunity to be in front of you today. I'm a huge fan of the bank, and the bank is how I was introduced to Terry Neese, who is a role model and a wonderful guide for other women. And I want to thank the Institute for the Economic Empowerment of Women for the work that you do. AT&T, I am a customer and always appreciate your sponsorship as well. And I want to, in closing, share a story that I hope provides a framework for you to think about the importance of authenticity over perfection. We always think we need to be perfect public speakers, but in fact, it's really about being authentic. And what taught me that was leaving the field of opera. I told you that I'm an opera singer by training. I left, I didn't tell you why. And I left I left opera because I didn't think I was good enough, and because my teacher told me I wasn't a good enough opera singer. I'm a first soprano, very high singing voice. And I was never good enough, and I lost my passion and just stopped singing opera. I actually became a folk singer, and I much more enjoy singing folk music. But a month ago, I started to take lessons again from an opera singer. I started to take lessons in opera. And on our first lesson, virtual lesson, my voice teacher leaned into the camera and she got a twinkle in her eye and she said, "I think I know why you never made it as an opera singer." I said, "Why?" She said, "You're not a soprano." And I thought, what do you mean? I have identified as a soprano my entire life. I'm 42. I've always thought of myself as a soprano. She said, "You're a mezzo soprano," which for those of you who don't know, soprano is like the very high voice. Mezzo is a lower, bigger voice that can also sing high, but it's a different vocal tone. And I spent 30 years in the wrong box, because somebody put me in the wrong box when I was 18 years old, and I never knew what my real voice was. So as we conclude, I want to share with you a brief operatic piece in my real voice to remind you of the importance of authenticity, of finding your box, not whatever box somebody else put you in, but being true to yourself in that process of discovering who you are, using the why you, and it will have an incredible impact on your business, on your relationships, on your community, and every single person you touch and advocate for. So I will close with this very brief musical clip, which I hope comes across well across the microphone. Lascia ch'io pianga mia cruda sorte e che sospiri la libertà. I very much enjoyed the opportunity to work with you. Thank you very much.